Hello there. The last words Saddam Hussein heard before he was hanged were political slogans and taunts from his executioners. A new video has been posted on the internet which differs from the official video.
Among the chants heard before the trapdoor opened was a plea for dignity in the name of Shia leader Muqtada al-Sadr. Meanwhile, thousands of Iraqis have been gathering in Saddam's hometown, where he was buried in the early hours of Sunday morning. Al Jazeera's John Cookson now reports.
24 hours after he was executed, Saddam Hussein was buried in his hometown of Alger, near the banks of the River Tigris today. He'd led a turbulent life, and even his last moments before death became controversial with the release of a new videotape. These were the carefully choreographed pictures we saw on Saturday of Saddam's execution. Now the images and sounds we were probably never meant to see. The same event shot on a mobile phone from a different angle, showing what really happened in Saddam's final moments. There was no audio on yesterday's tape, and crucially, it's the voices and other sounds which tell the story. Al Jazeera has decided on grounds of taste for a general audience not to show all the video. We pick things up as Saddam moves forward with the noose around his neck. He prays. Saddam. Witnesses. Then, chanting the name of Shia leader Muqtada al-Sadr, the witnesses. Saddam, smiling, says. Then a plea for some dignity. Witnesses. Knowing the trapdoor is about to open, Saddam cries. The body drops and then chaos. Witnesses. One of Saddam's lawyers told Al Jazeera the video is further proof, if it was needed, that the Shias are running the show in Iraq.
Muqtada Sadr and some other Al-Hakim's people who are actually the militia running now the country in a very ethnic, hatred, revenge way. You didn't see within that audience as Sunnis.
As supporters prayed for Saddam, they believed they buried a Sunni president who was the victim of a Shia execution. John Cookson, Al Jazeera.
Well, for more, let's now join Al Jazeera's Iraq correspondent Huda Abdelhamid. She's in Baghdad. Huda, as we saw there, this new footage of Saddam being taunted in his final moments as he was led to the gallows. Any reaction there where you are?
Well, again, mixed reaction. It really reflects the reality of Iraq today. You'll have some people who are going to be very skeptical about what happened. They're going to point the fingers at that video, saying this is again one of the proofs that this was a Shia revenge. They will say that this is another proof that the security forces are completely infiltrated by the Mahdi army, which is a militia loyal to Muqtada al-Sadr. Again, they're going to use this again to make their voice a bit louder. We've been hearing all along many fears among Iraqis that this execution will increase the divide between Sunni and Shias, and a video like this is likely to make them wonder if it's not going to increase it more. Now, on the other side, the people loyal to Muqtada al-Sadr will be very supportive of this video. They will look at Muqtada al-Sadr as some sort of hero. His men have carried this execution, or at least so it appears from that video, and they were calling for his name, making him another time a hero in this story.
Indeed, and so do you think this is likely to arouse sympathy for the former dictator?
Certainly the people who were against this process all along, who had been saying that the court was an illegitimate court, the people who were against the execution of Saddam Hussein, saying that it was an American operation from beginning to end until he was handed in the last few moments to the Iraqi forces, will say this is again another proof that it was all a political execution, and that this execution was carried by a Shiite government wanting to have revenge on the Sunnis and on Saddam Hussein. On the other side, as I said earlier, the Shias or some of the people who have suffered under Saddam Hussein will look at this video with no sympathy at all and will say, you know, this is the revenge for what he got for the years of suffering that he has given us.
And Hoda, given that we saw bombing attacks in the country just within hours of Saddam's execution, could these new details that are coming out, where the name of Muqtada al-Sadr is mentioned in that footage, he's obviously been involved in some of the worst sectarian fighting we've seen in Iraq, could this now incite more violence?
Well, this is really the fear here at this point. The Mahdi army has been accused all along of having infiltrated completely the police and the security forces here in Iraq. They're also accused by the Sunnis of carrying arbitrary killings, of hunting down Sunnis, of kidnapping them, torturing them, and then dumping them. We've seen on a daily basis bodies found in and around the capital of Sunnis being tortured and killed by the Mahdi army, at least so they say. Now, the fear is that this kind of video will just increase the anger between the extremists on one side and the extremists on the other side.
Hoda Abdelhamid there in Baghdad, thank you. And coming up later in the programme, we'll have reaction to Saddam's hanging from the streets of Cairo, Kuwait and Damascus.
In other news, more than 170 passengers have now been rescued from the Indonesian ferry disaster, but hopes are fading for the hundreds still missing. A fleet of Navy ships, fishing boats and aircraft are searching the area off central Java where the ferry capsized in rough seas. This report now from Al-Jazeera's David Hawkins, who's in Semarang in Indonesia.
Those who can speak say the ship sank suddenly, without warning. In the confusion, as the ferry lurched and began taking on water, they jumped into the sea. I heard some noise and the lights went out, says Kasime. My son and I were separated. Water started rushing in, so I jumped. Her 5-year-old boy, Agil, is still missing. Waluyo lost his 15-month-old son and a nephew. His wife and daughter survived. We wouldn't have made it if the fishermen hadn't found us, he says. The Indonesian Navy has 4 ships and at least 2 aircraft searching the sea. But many of the survivors have been rescued by local fishermen who know these waters well. It's the rainy season here, a time of rough seas. Indonesia's transportation minister says the government is investigating the accident. But the cause of the tragedy was simply bad weather.
The weather is extremely very bad. The wave is, according to the report, the wave is up to 5 and 6 meters. So that the main cause of this accident.
The search for survivors continues at sea and on land, where relatives scour lists for the names of their loved ones. They continue to hope that those still lost at sea will be found.
Ethiopian-backed government troops in Somalia are heading to the last outpost of the Islamic Courts movement, the southern port town of Kismayo. Hundreds of residents are said to be fleeing the town ahead of the latest offensive. Yes, it comes just over 2 days after the interim government retook the capital Mogadishu, but the Islamic courts have pledged to continue their fight and claim the population will help them. Al Jazeera's Mohammed Ado looks at the latest developments.
Arriving for a meeting that nobody expected so soon. Somalia's President Abdullahi Yusuf held talks with his Prime Minister on Saturday. On the outskirts of Mogadishu, the pair also met clan leaders, just days after Ethiopian troops drove Islamic Courts fighters out of the capital.
We wanted to stabilize all the districts and towns which have been liberated from the terrorists. So the extra forces are needed, and we are planning it and mobilizing them to come.
We should work on restabilizing the country and uniting the nation to go back to what we used to be in the peaceful days.
Thousands of Somali and Ethiopian troops are still advancing on the southern port city of Kismayo, 500 kilometers to the south. It's the last stronghold of the Union of Islamic Courts, which until last week controlled the capital and much of the south. The Islamic Courts still have thousands of their fighters here, and they're vowing to resist any attack.
Somalis are ready for resistance. We are ready for it. We decided to fight the enemy everywhere, in Somalia and in every area. in which Somalis live.